You open your eyes when your body decides it's time. No alarm clock, no meeting to rush to, nowhere you're required to be. You stretch, sit up, and there's really only one question in front of you: what do I feel like doing today? For roughly 300,000 years, that wasn't some thought experiment. It was just Tuesday, and the answer looked absolutely nothing like the routine you're living now. The average modern person will clock around 90,000 hours on the job over a lifetime, close to a third of every waking hour they get. But across nearly all of human history, jobs simply weren't a thing. No paychecks, no bosses, no climbing a corporate ladder. So what filled the hours instead? Let's start with the evidence we actually have. Back in 1963, anthropologist Richard Lee ran a study that reshaped how researchers thought about prehistoric daily life. He shadowed the Dobi-Juhansi community in Botswana, one of the last groups whose lifestyle still mirrors that of pre-farming humans, and clocked how they spent their time. The result: about 2.5 days a week went toward finding food, call it 17 hours or so. Everything outside of that was theirs to spend however they liked. And here's the part that really stands out: this isn't a one-off. Researchers see the same pattern with the Hadza in Tanzania, the Ashe in Paraguay, the Martu in Australia. Different continents, different climates, same rough number, 15 to 20 hours a week on survival tests. That's about half of what most people put in at a job today. Now you might be thinking, fine, but that's modern foragers, not literal cavemen. How do we know ancient humans lived this way too? The answer is written in bone. Compare skeletons from early farming societies to those from before agriculture, and the contrast jumps out immediately. Farmers tended to be shorter, showed clear signs of poor nutrition, had teeth wrecked by grain-heavy diets, and developed spinal arthritis from repetitive labor, and they didn't live as long. Pre-agricultural skeletons tell a different story: taller frames, sturdier builds, healthier teeth, far less joint deterioration. The bones themselves argue against a life of non-stop grinding. But the evidence that really surprises people is art, because art shouldn't exist if every day was a desperate fight to survive. In 1994, explorers stumbled onto Chauvet Cave in southern France. Inside, paintings roughly 30,000 years old, horses, lions, rhinos, rendered with real depth, shading, a sense of motion. These weren't rough scratches. This took real skill, planning, and above all, time. Somebody sat in the dark with only firelight for hours, maybe days, painting animals on stone walls, not to eat, not to survive, but because it was beautiful, because it meant something, because it was worth doing. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, researchers uncovered shell beads roughly 100,000 years old, each one carefully pierced to be strung as jewelry. The closest shoreline sat 20 kilometers away. Someone made a 40-kilometer round trip just to gather shells, then spent hours patiently boring holes with stone tools, purely to look good. In 2008, a flute carved from a vulture bone turned up in Germany, dated to roughly 40,000 years ago, with 5 precisely spaced finger holes. Whoever made it understood pitch and had put real time into getting it right, not for the hunt, not for defense, for music. These aren't rare exceptions. Sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia going back 100,000 plus years are packed with decorative items. Tools far more elaborate than survival strictly demanded, and objects that clearly took hours of focused effort with zero practical payoff. This is what people did in the time left over. Once food was handled, they made things. They decorated. They pursued beauty for its own sake. So let's piece together what an actual day might have looked like. You wake near dawn. Last night's fire is still glowing. Someone tosses on more wood. Breakfast is whatever's left. Meat or fish from the day before, maybe nuts or berries gathered earlier. It's a social moment. People chat, loosely sketch out the day ahead, not out of obligation, just because that's what people do. By mid-morning, a handful of people might head out to hunt or forage, but crucially, not everyone goes, and not every day. If the last hunt went well and there's food stored up, the whole group might just stay put. Instead, the morning might go toward tool work, sharpening a spear, weaving a basket, softening an animal hide. This isn't labor in the way we use the word, no clock, no manager checking in. It gets done because skill matters, because being good at something earns respect, because craftsmanship is part of what it means to be human here. When a hunt does happen, forget the frantic chase scenes from movies. Humans are persistence hunters. We track prey at a steady jog for hours until the animal overheats and gives out. We're built for this in a way almost nothing else is. because we sweat and regulate body heat while moving. Most animals simply can't keep pace with that. A hunt, travel included, might run 3 to 6 hours. The kill gets hauled back, butchered, shared, and everyone eats. By early afternoon, the productive part of the day is basically wrapped up, and what comes after is the part modern life makes hard to picture. Both nothing and everything. People rest. They sit in the shade, talk, play with the kids, groom one another, picking through hair, the kind of small physical closeness that reinforces bonds. They craft jewelry from shells, teeth, or beads. They carve patterns into bone or stone. They nap. Anthropologist James Sussman found that the Juwanzi spend roughly 6 hours a day in what he labeled social time, not working, not sleeping, just being together, talking, joking, existing side by side. In a world without money, police, or written agreements, your survival hinges entirely on your relationships. Fall out of favor with people and they've got no obligation to share food with you when times get lean, so an enormous amount of time goes into those bonds. Not because it pays off in some measurable way, but because it's what keeps a person human. Then the sun goes down and something shifts. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner studied hundreds of hours of recorded conversation among the UA show and see daytime talk skewed practical, where animal tracks were spotted, which plants were ready to harvest, grievances about someone not sharing their share. But once night fell around the fire, roughly 4 out of 5 conversations turned to storytelling. Origin myths, legendary ancestors, jokes, tales from distant places. Weissner's argument: this is where human culture actually took shape. Gods, spirits, the past, the future. The kind of thinking that only happens once your stomach's full and you feel safe. And sleep didn't come in one long block the way it does for most of us now. Records from medieval Europe, backed up by sleep research from the 1990s, show that before artificial lighting, people slept in 2 stretches. A first sleep of around 4 hours, then 1 or 2 hours awake in the dark, followed by a second sleep of another 4 hours or so. Put it all together and a typical day breaks down roughly like this: 4 to 6 hours on food or tour work. About 6 hours of social time, talking, storytelling, grooming, play, around 8 hours of sleep split into 2 phases, and the remainder just resting, sitting, watching the sky, being without needing to justify it through output. Then, about 10,000 years ago, everything shifted. In the Fertile Crescent, people began planting crops and domesticating animals. Agriculture had arrived, and agriculture turns out to be something of a trap. Farming lets you feed more people. More people means you need still more food. More food demands still more farming. Within a handful of generations, populations surged, and there was no walking it back. Too many mouths now depended on farming rather than foraging. The door had closed behind them, and farming demanded far more labor: plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting, storage, defending crops from animals and rivals alike. The skeletons don't lie here either. Early farmers worked harder, ate worse, and died younger than the foragers who came before. Yet populations kept climbing, and with bigger populations came specialization: toolmakers, potters, weavers, inventors, and eventually soldiers, priests, administrators. From there, employment followed, the notion that your time now belonged to someone else in exchange for resources. By the time cities rose, the old way of living was gone for good, swapped out for schedules and obligations, and the need to spend most of your waking life working just to get by inside the system humanity had built. Today, you'll spend around 90,000 hours working. Your distant ancestors spent a fraction of that. You sleep in a single block and call a 2 a.m. wake-up insomnia. They split their sleep in 2 and use the gap for quiet reflection. It's set toward chasing markers of success invented by the society around you. They were already living the life so many people today spend their entire working years hoping to retire into. You squeeze in art after the job's done. They made art because they had the time for it, because that's simply what humans do. We're not a different species, but the way we live now is so far removed from how humans spent 99% of our existence that we might as well be. If this made you think differently about how you spend your day, you're not alone, and you're not stuck either. You can't undo 10,000 years of agriculture, but you can steal back a little of what we lost: an hour without a screen, a conversation with no agenda, something made with your hands just because. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe for more of these deep dives into how humans actually lived. And let me know in the comments, what would you do with your extra 15 hours a week?